Notification came through at 4:47 on a Tuesday afternoon, and I had to read it 3 times before it actually landed. Effective immediately, Zoe Hartwell is appointed Regional Operations Manager, Southwest Division. My name. On a company-wide email to 412 people, I sat in my car in the parking garage for a full 10 minutes, hands still on the steering wheel, just breathing. 5 years. 5 years of 6 a.m. starts and skipped lunches and driving 40 minutes each way to a distribution center in Phoenix that smelled like cardboard and industrial cleaner. 5 years of learning every process, every vendor contract, every quirk of our logistics software, while guys like my predecessor took long lunches and golfed with the VP of supply chain. I had built the case for my own promotion in a 12-page operational audit that I presented to the leadership team on a Thursday morning while running a low-grade fever because I was not going to reschedule. I called my husband on the way home. He picked up on the 4th ring. I could hear the television in the background. "I got it," I said. "The promotion. It's official. Regional Operations Manager." There was a pause. "Cool," he said. "Can you stop and get milk?" "We're out." I almost laughed. I thought it was a joke. I said, "Did you hear what I just said?" Yeah, congrats." He sounded like I'd told him I found a good parking spot. "We seriously need milk though, and maybe grab something for dinner. I haven't eaten." I hung up and sat at the red light for a long moment, the glow of it washing over the windshield. The feeling in my chest was strange. Not quite deflation. Something colder. I stopped for milk. I picked up dinner. I drove home to the house in Tempe that we had bought together 3 years ago, the house where I had spent every weekend for the past 18 months painting walls and ripping up old carpet and planting a jasmine vine along the back fence that was finally starting to climb. My husband was on the couch when I walked in. He took the bag without looking up and said, "They announced the new manager yet, or is it still up in the air?" I stared at him. "I literally just told you," I said. "It's me. I'm the manager." "Oh, right. He pulled out the container of soup I picked up. He popped the lid and said, "Smells good," and went back to the television. I put the milk in the refrigerator. I went upstairs and changed out of my work clothes. I sat on the edge of the bed in the quiet of our room, and I thought about the text he'd sent me that morning. "Good luck today, I guess." Like my 5 years of work deserved a hedge. We'd been married for 4 years. Together for 6. I knew who he was. He was not a bad man, not in the dramatic obvious ways. He didn't yell. He didn't gamble. He wasn't cruel. He was just relentlessly, exhaustingly indifferent to anything that didn't directly affect him, and I had spent years mistaking that indifference for steadiness. The call from my mother-in-law came 2 days later. I was at work when she rang, so I let it go to voicemail. I listened to it in my car at lunch. Her voice was warm and floaty the way it always was when she wanted something. "Honey, it's Mom. Listen, I've got some news and I just think it would be so much better to talk in person. Are you and my son free Saturday? I'll make my pot roast. You love my pot roast. You love my pot roast. Call me back, sweetheart. I did not love her pot roast. I had politely eaten her pot roast many times. These were different things. Saturday came, we drove 40 minutes to her place in Mesa. She had set the table with the good dishes. My brother-in-law was there, which I hadn't expected. He's 22, just finished his associate's degree, works part-time at a sporting goods store, and has the energy of someone who believes the world is a problem other people will eventually solve for him. We sat down. My mother-in-law passed the pot roast. She talked about her neighbor's new dog. She talked about a show she'd been watching. And then, over the mashed potatoes, she said it. "So, I've been having a rough time since your father-in-law's life insurance settled." She folded her hands. "The checks are going fast. My pension only covers so much. And with the roof situation at my place, I set my fork down. I just think the smartest thing would be for me to move in with you too." She smiled at me, warm and expectant. "You have that extra room. I wouldn't be any trouble. I'd cook, help keep the house. It would be like having a live-in housekeeper, really." I looked at my husband. He was nodding. Slowly, seriously, like this was a conclusion he'd already reached. "I think it makes a lot of sense," he said. "She's family." I said, When did you two discuss this? His jaw tightened. We're discussing it now. You're presenting it to me, I said. There's a difference. My mother-in-law's smile flickered. Honey, I don't mean to put anyone out. But your husband and I talked, and with your new promotion and all, and there it was, my promotion. Referenced as a resource. Not an achievement, not something I'd worked for, but a budget line item that solved a problem I hadn't agreed to take on. What does my promotion have to do with this? I asked. Well, she said carefully, it means more money coming in, more flexibility, a little more room in the budget. My brother-in-law cleared his throat. Actually, he said, and I want you to know, I'm open to it too, moving in. The commute from here to my job is kind of brutal, and if there's space... I put my fork down completely. The drive home was silent for the first 20 minutes. Then my husband said, I don't understand why you're upset. They're family. You planned this without telling me, I said. I mentioned it to my mom, he said. That's not planning. You mentioned it to my mom, he said. That's not planning. You mentioned that our spare room was available and that my promotion meant we could afford it before you said a single word to me. We were at a light. He looked out the side window. You always make everything into a thing, he said. It's two people. It's temporary. Your brother being there was a surprise, I said. Is that temporary too? He made the kind of shrug that means I don't want to have this conversation. I've known that shrug for 6 years. I didn't sleep well that night. I lay in the dark and thought about the spare room, which I had been quietly imagining as a home office, a real one, with a proper desk and a door I could close. I had been doing my operations work at the kitchen table for 2 years. I thought about the jasmine along the back fence. I thought about how my husband had said my promotion the same way he said your work stuff and your ambitious thing, with that very specific flatness that communicated an entire worldview. He wasn't threatened by my success. He was just completely unbothered by it, which I was starting to understand was its own kind of dismissal. He told me a week later that his mother had already given notice at her apartment. I found out because she sent me a text asking what color I wanted to paint the guest room. The guest room that was currently mine. The room I had repainted twice, whose closet I had organized, where I kept my work files and my grandmother's quilt. She'd given notice. Before I had agreed to anything. Before my husband and I had had a single real conversation. I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time. Then I called my friend Tara. Tara and I have been friends since college. She's a family law paralegal who once spent 45 minutes on the phone walking me through the difference between marital and separate property when I was buying my car, just because she thought I should know. She listens the way lawyers listen, without interrupting, filing everything. I told her everything. She was quiet for a moment after I finished. Then she said, Zoe, who owns the house, both of us, joint mortgage. I put in 30% of the down payment from my savings. And the monthly payment, about 60-40. I cover more because I make more. Okay, she said. And where is this written down? It's not, I said. It's just how it worked out. I heard her exhale slowly. Okay, don't panic. But I need you to start keeping records. Every payment you make. Every conversation about this arrangement. Screenshot everything. What are you thinking? I asked. I'm thinking, she said carefully, that if your mother-in-law moves in before you formally agreed, and your brother-in-law follows, and your income is being used to fund it, that's a financial and living situation you didn't consent to. And those things have a way of becoming very hard to undo. I asked her if she knew a good family attorney. She gave me a name. I saved it in my phone under D. Dentist, just in case. My mother-in-law moved in on a Saturday. I came home from a morning shift to find her bedroom furniture already in the spare room, a crocheted throw on my couch, a Virgin Mary figurine on the windowsill in the hallway that I definitely had not put there, the refrigerator reorganized, her section, our section, labeled with a piece of masking tape. My husband was helping her hang curtains. He looked up when I walked in, and something in his expression was satisfied in a way I hadn't seen in a long time, like everything was finally arranged to his liking. I set my keys down. I went upstairs. I sat on the edge of the bed again, in the same spot I'd sat when he said, cool about my promotion. My brother-in-law moved in 3 weeks later. Temporary basis, my husband said. Just until he gets back on his feet. He took over the room that had been my office. He put a lock on the door I didn't have a key for. He left his dishes in the sink. He started using my parking spot because it was closer to the door. I started working at the kitchen table again, sometimes at 11 at night because it was the only time the house was quiet enough to think. My husband came in one of those nights, poured himself a glass of water, and watched me for a second. "You work too much," he said. "You should relax more. Mom would love it if you ate dinner with us." I looked up at him over my laptop screen. "She wants to feel included," he said. "She asks about you." "I'm working," I said, "for the job that pays this mortgage." He set the glass down. "Why do you always do that?" "Do what?" "Make everything about money. It's like you keep score." "I keep records," I said. "There's a difference." He went to bed. I opened a new spreadsheet and started logging every household expense for the last 6 months. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, the propane bill, the new water heater in March that I had paid for entirely because he said he was short that month. I looked at the numbers for a long time. Then I opened my phone and texted the attorney's name Tara had given me. The attorney's name was Priya Mehta. Her office was in Scottsdale. Clean lines, desert plants in the windows, the kind of quiet that costs something. She was around 40, precise, and had the kind of calm that came from having seen everything at least twice. She didn't waste words. "Tell me what's happening," she said, and I told her. All of it. She took notes on a yellow legal pad without looking up. When I finished, she set her pen down. "You're in a situation that's more common than you'd think," she said. "An unsupportive spouse uses a higher-earning partner's resources to benefit their family of origin, gradually shifting the household's financial and logistical center of gravity away from the marriage." I stared at her. "That's exactly what it is," I said. "The tricky part is that it happens incrementally." She tapped her pen against the pad. "Nothing is outrageous on its own, but the pattern, the unilateral decisions, the financial impact, the erasure of your professional space. That's a pattern a court will recognize. What do I need to do?" "Document everything," she said. "Every expense, every conversation, every text." She leaned forward. "And I need you to open a separate account at a different bank today, move your direct deposit, leave enough in the joint account for his expenses so he can't claim abandonment, but your income stops flowing into the family pot starting now." I nodded. "One more thing," she said. "The house. Your 30% down payment, do you have documentation?" "Bank records?" "Yes. And the check was from my personal savings account, which is separate." "Good." She made a note. "We'll want that." "And the 60/40 payment history?" "I have a spreadsheet," I said. She looked up. "How long have you been keeping it?" 2 weeks, I said. She almost smiled. "Start from the beginning. Go back as far as you can. Statements, transfers, everything." I opened a new bank account at a Chase branch on my lunch break that Wednesday. I set up direct deposit. I sat in the parking lot afterward and felt something I hadn't felt in months. A small, cold, specific sense of control. The confrontation happened on a Thursday evening. I came home to find my mother-in-law and my brother-in-law sitting at the kitchen table with a notebook between them and my husband, standing by the counter with his arms crossed. The posture of a man who has been waiting. "We need to talk about finances," my husband said. I set my bag down. I sat down. What my mother-in-law laid out was, in retrospect, almost impressively bold. She had written it down, bullet points in her careful handwriting. The household expenses were higher than expected. The grocery bill had gone up. She felt uncomfortable not contributing, which was why she had an idea. She wanted to manage the household budget. My money, the salary for my promotion, would go into a shared account. She would oversee payments, groceries, household management. It would take the stress off me. I could focus on my career. She was good with money. Hadn't she kept the books for her church for 11 years? My brother-in-law nodded through all of this like he was in a board meeting. I looked at my husband. He looked back at me with an expression that said, "See, isn't this practical? You want me to give my paycheck to your mother to manage," I said. He flinched at the phrasing. "She would manage it for all of us, including the house," I said. "The house where I made the down payment." It's our house, he said. Then I should be the one managing the money, I said, not someone who doesn't own it. My mother-in-law's expression cooled. I've raised a family, she said. I know how to run a household. I'm sure you do, I said. But this is my household. There was a silence. My brother-in-law started scrolling his phone. My husband's jaw set. You're being disrespectful, he said. I'm being accurate, I said. He stood up straighter. The thing is, Zoe, and his voice had dropped into the tone I had come to recognize, the one that meant he'd rehearsed this. With your income and my mom's help and Devin helping out around the place, we could actually pay this house off in maybe 8 years instead of 27. Think about that. That's real financial freedom. On paper, it sounded almost reasonable. I knew it wasn't. What happens to my equity percentage if I'm funding an accelerated payoff? I asked. He blinked. What do you mean? I mean, if my income is paying down the mortgage faster, my share of the equity should reflect that. I'd want that in writing. He looked at his mother. Something passed between them. She said sweetly, you know, to keep things simple for the estate down the road, it might be cleaner to just have the deed in your husband's name alone. We can always add you back later. It's just paperwork, really. The room went very still. I understood what I was looking at. It was not a financial strategy, it was a transfer. They wanted me to fund the house and surrender my legal claim to it. They had worked this out beforehand, the budget management proposal as the entry point, the deed suggestion as the end goal. My mother-in-law had written it in bullet points. I picked up my bag from the floor. I said, I'm going to need some time to think about this. My husband said, there's nothing to think about. This is the plan. I looked at him for a moment. I said, I'll let you know. I went to our room and closed the door and called Priya from the closet with the door shut. She picked up on the second ring. I told her about the deed. There was a short pause. She said, say that again. The last part. They want me to quick deed my interest to my husband. His mother called it simplifying for the estate. Another pause. Then she said, that is attempted financial fraud. Textbook. She sounded almost impressed by the audacity. Do you have any of this in writing? I said, I think I recorded it. She said, you think? I said, I opened the voice memo app when I sat down. I had a feeling. She said, send it to me immediately. Arizona is a one-party consent state. I had not known that before I met Priya. I knew it very well afterward. The next morning I went to work, did my job, and moved the last of my personal files out of the house while everyone was out. My grandmother's quilt, a box of photographs, my external hard drive. I put them in the trunk of my car. I texted Priya, ready. She filed within the week. The petition for legal separation landed at my husband's workplace via process server on a Tuesday morning. He called me 47 times between 10 a.m. and noon. I let all of them go to voicemail. Priya had prepared me. Let him exhaust the panic, she said. His first emotion will be rage. His second will be desperation. The second one is when we can work. His voicemails went from furious, how dare you? This is insane, I can't believe you, to confused. I don't even know what I did. Why are you doing this? To something smaller and more plaintive. Zoe, come on, just call me back. We can figure this out. I did not call him back. I also did not call his mother back, who left a voicemail that was so aggressively sweet it had a kind of genius to it. Honey, we're all just so worried. You've been under so much stress with this job. We all love you. Come home. Family works things out. I saved that one under Exhibit D. My brother-in-law texted me a single message. This is messed up. I screenshot it and did not respond. Priya and I met 3 days after the filing. She'd already reviewed the recording, the financials, and the timeline I'd put together. The deed conversation is significant, she said. Combined with the financial control proposal and the household situation, we have a pattern of coercive control and dissipation of marital assets. The recording is clean. What can we actually get? I asked. She tapped her pen on the legal pad. Disproportionate share of the house equity, given your down payment and your payment history. I'd argue for 65 to 35, he'll have to buy you out. He can't, so he'd have to sell. Unless his mother wants to buy it at market value. She gave me a dry look. I'm guessing not. She walked me through the rest. Separation of accounts was already done. The direct deposit change was already done. I needed to change all my passwords, my insurance beneficiary, my emergency contact at work. I needed to document every attempt at contact. "One more thing," she said. "He'll try to catch you off guard. An unexpected visit. A let's just talk text. He'll try to get you emotional in private before we can get a formal agreement." "What do I do?" "You are a black hole," she said. "Nothing goes in, nothing comes out. Every single communication goes through me." I nodded. She said, "And Zoe, install a camera at wherever you're staying." I was staying with Tara. I bought a camera at Target on the way over and had it up before midnight. The visit happened 11 days later. I was at Tara's eating cereal at the counter and reviewing my team's Q3 projections when the doorbell rang. Tara was at work. I checked the camera I'd set up facing the front entrance. My husband. His mother behind him, holding a casserole dish. I did not open the door. He knocked. He rang again. I heard his voice through the door. "Zoe, I know you're in there. I just want to talk. 5 minutes. That's it." His mother, softer, "Honey, I brought food. You have to eat." I texted Priya, "He's at Tara's." Both of them. Her response came in under a minute. "Do not open the door. I'll send a cease and desist for contact today. If they don't leave in 10 minutes, call non-emergency police." They left in 8. I sat down on the couch with my cereal and my heart rate at about 140, and I thought about the jasmine vine along the back fence of my house, about the walls I had painted, about the water heater I had paid for alone. Then I thought about Priya's voice, clear and steady. Then I finished my cereal and went back to the Q3 projections. The temporary orders hearing was 4 weeks later. I wore a charcoal blazer and a white shirt, and the specific earrings I wore to my promotion interview. Small, plain, professional. Priya wore navy. We arrived 15 minutes early. My husband arrived with a family court attorney he'd found through his credit union, a tired-looking man named Gary, who had a website that still listed his fax number. The courtroom was quiet. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Judge Paris, who moved through her docket with the efficiency of someone who had seen the same argument from 100 different angles and was not easily impressed. Priya presented the financials first. My down payment. My payment history. The gap between our incomes. She presented the voice recording. Gary objected. Judge Paris listened to 45 seconds of it, my mother-in-law's voice saying we can always add you back later, it's just paperwork, and overruled him without looking up. My husband sat very still during that part. Priya requested exclusive occupancy for me, based on financial contribution, and temporary support for attorney's fees based on the income disparity. She presented the text documentation of the contact attempts as a pattern of harassment. Gary made several arguments. They were not strong arguments. He appeared to know they were not strong arguments. Judge Paris made her ruling in about 12 minutes. She was direct and moved fast. "Neither party gets exclusive occupancy at this stage," she said, "but given the documented concern for harassment, the petitioner is not required to return to the marital home. Respondent will be responsible for the full mortgage, utilities, and carrying costs until further order of the court. Respondent will contribute $1,500 toward petitioner's attorney's fees within 30 days. My husband looked like he'd been lightly stunned. Gary whispered to him for a few seconds. My husband looked at me across the aisle. His expression was not angry. It was something I hadn't seen from him in a long time, a genuine, unguarded confusion, like he was truly trying to understand how we had ended up here. I didn't smile at him. I didn't look away either. I just held his gaze until he turned back to his attorney. Outside the courtroom, Priya handed me a coffee from the cup she'd been carrying and said, "Mortgage is his problem now. He can't cover the loan without your income. We'll have a settlement offer within 60 days. And his mother and brother? Still in the house? Still his expense." She took a sip of her own coffee. "That particular arrangement will stop looking appealing to him very quickly." She was right. The first mortgage payment after the court order was late. The second one was 30 days late. The mortgage servicer sent a formal notice of default. My husband texted me about it through Priya, the first message that came through proper channels. Priya forwarded it to me with a note, "He's close." 2 more weeks. My brother-in-law had already moved out by then. His part-time job at the sporting goods store had cut his hours, and apparently funding a third of a household on a regular income while your sister-in-law is in legal proceedings is a less appealing arrangement than he'd anticipated. My mother-in-law called Tara's number once, which was how I knew she'd dug through old contact records. Tara answered, said she's not available without any embellishment, and hung up. I sent the call log to Priya labeled Exhibit F. At work, things had continued to be what they were. I was good at my job. I had always been good at my job, and the situation at home had, strangely, sharpened something in me. I came in with fewer distractions. I stayed later. I ran tighter operations reviews. My VP, a measured man named Stuart who communicated primarily through raised eyebrows and forwarded emails, sent me a direct message one afternoon that said only, "Henderson contract just renewed. Your team, nice work." From Stuart, that was a standing ovation. He called me into his office the following week. "There's a company acquisition in the works," he said. "Dallas-based company, mid-size, strong logistics infrastructure. If we close, we'll need someone to lead the integration team. It's a 6-month assignment, heavy on-site." He looked at me over his glasses. "I'd like it to be you." I kept my voice level. "When would this start?" 30 to 60 days out if we close." "What's the title?" "Director of Integration, Southwest and South Central." I thought about it for exactly 5 seconds. I said, "I'm interested." He nodded, like that was the expected answer. I called Priya from the parking garage afterward. She listened to the whole thing and then said, "Tell me more about the on-site part." "Heavy travel. Dallas probably 60% of the time for 6 months." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That is a gift." "What do you mean?" "I mean that your husband's attorney is going to hear about this and conclude that you're choosing your career over the marriage, that you're a flight risk who will take the job and leave the house behind." I said, "I'm not leaving anything behind." "No," she said, "but he doesn't know that. And scared, greedy people make bad settlements. Let the rumor do its work." The offer became official 10 days later. Priya made sure it traveled through appropriate channels in exactly the way information travels in tight professional circles. Not announced, but findable. My husband's counteroffer came through Gary 3 weeks after the hearing. It was a single page. His terms, he keeps the house. I take my car and my personal savings. Clean break. No support either way. Priya forwarded it to me with a single line. "Don't respond yet. Let him wait." We waited 4 days. Then she sent back her counter. 65 to 35 equity split, based on documented financial contribution. He covers his attorney's fees as ordered. Mutual non-disparagement agreement. Full accounting of joint accounts for the previous 24 months. Gary called Priya the same afternoon. He said my husband was devastated. He said the house was central to his client's sense of stability. He asked if there was any room to move on the equity percentage. Priya said he can buy her out at 65. If he can't, he sells and they split accordingly. Gary said his client didn't have the cash to buy me out. Priya said, then he sells. There was a long pause on Gary's end. He said he'd call back. He called back in 2 days. My husband accepted. I signed the settlement agreement from a rental apartment in Dallas, a furnished 1-bedroom with a view of downtown and a functional desk that I had never once had to share. My portion of the equity landed in my new account 2 months later, after the house sold. The house I had painted, planted, and paid for. The number in my account was the clearest thing I had ever seen. My husband's portion went to a 2-bedroom apartment closer to his mother's new place. I heard through Tara, who heard through someone else, that my brother-in-law had moved in with him temporarily. I thought about that for about 4 seconds and moved on. Dallas was good. I was built for this kind of work, taking something complicated and making it run cleaner and faster than it did before. My integration team was 12 people, and I had handpicked 9 of them. We worked fast. We worked well. I ate lunch at actual restaurants with people who asked real questions and wanted real answers. There was a woman on my team named Soledad who had survived a company reorganization that had gutted her entire department and rebuilt herself from scratch in 18 months. She brought me coffee once and looked at my desk, spare, organized, one-framed photo of the Phoenix Mountains I'd taken myself, and said, "You live light." I said, "I used to live heavier. It wasn't better." She laughed in the way people laugh when they understand exactly what you mean. The phone call from my ex-husband came on a rainy Thursday afternoon, 4 months after the settlement was final. I was on my way out of a vendor meeting when my phone lit up with his number, which I had not yet deleted. I don't know why I answered. I think I was curious what register he'd find. He was quiet for a moment after I said hello. Then he said, "It's me." "I know," I said. He said, I've been thinking a lot about everything." He exhaled slowly. "I messed up. I really messed up, Zoe. I let my mom run things she shouldn't have. I didn't see what I was doing to you. To us." I stood in the hallway outside the conference room, watching the rain on the window. He said, "I miss you. I miss our house. I miss the way things were before all of this started." I thought about the jasmine vine. I wondered if the new owners had kept it or pulled it up. I thought about the night I sat at the kitchen table at 11 o'clock doing operations work because the house was too loud to think. I thought about him saying, "Cool," on the phone. I said, "I know you believe that." He said, "I do. I really do. I know I had my head somewhere else. I know I let my family." I said, "You didn't let your family do anything. You made choices, one at a time." For a long time, his voice got quieter. "Yeah," I said, "I hope you figure things out. I really do, but don't call this number again. There's a non-disparagement clause for a reason, and if you reach out again, I'll forward it to Priya." He said my name once, soft and a little desperate. I said, "Take care of yourself." I ended the call. I stood in the hallway for another moment. I noticed that my chest felt completely even, not tight, not relieved, not sad, just steady, the way a room feels after you've finally fixed the window that was letting the draft in. I put the phone in my pocket and went back to work. 8 months later, I was in a meeting room in Phoenix presenting the integration results to the full executive team. 12 slides, 18 months of work condensed into 30 minutes of data, and the data was good, better than projected. Our supply chain error rate was down 22%. Vendor contract renewals were up. Stuart was in the back row, and he'd already forwarded me a 3-word email that morning: "Room is ready." The room was a VP office in the Southwest Division. His was a position opening in the fall. He'd made no official announcement, but Stuart communicated and forwarded emails and raised eyebrows, and I had learned to read both. After the meeting, a young woman from the operations team, maybe 24, newer hire, sharp in the way that people are when they are paying very close attention, caught me in the hallway. She said, "I read the integration report. The sections on team structure and communication. I didn't expect it to be that honest about what went wrong." I said, "The wrong turns are the most useful parts." She nodded. She had the look of someone carrying something she hadn't fully named yet. She said, "Can I ask you something? Off the record?" I said, "Sure." She said, "How do you—" She paused and recalibrated. "How do you know when something isn't going to get better, when you're in it? How do you know if you're being patient or just waiting?" I looked at her for a moment. I said, "You usually know. The question is whether you're ready to trust what you know." She held that for a second. Then she nodded again, slowly, in a way that meant she had already known the answer and just needed someone to say it out loud. I thought about that conversation for a while afterward, about the girl I had been 3 years ago, sitting at a kitchen table at 11 at night, while the house was full of people who weren't there for me. About the very specific texture of being overlooked by someone who is supposed to see you. My apartment in Phoenix was small and exactly what I needed. A desk by the window, a good lamp, a new jasmine plant in a terracotta pot on the patio that I had started from a cutting, which was not the same as the vine on the back fence, but was alive and growing and entirely mine. I watered it in the mornings before work. Some days it was the best part of my morning, just standing there with a watering can in the quiet, watching something I tended become more than it was when I started. The VP decision came through on a Tuesday afternoon, an email from Stuart at 4:51. Subject line, "Congratulations." 2 words in the body, "It's yours." I read it. I put my phone down. I sat at my desk and let it arrive properly, the whole weight of it, without hurrying past. Then I called Tara. She answered on the first ring. I said, "VP, Southwest Division, official." She made the exact sound I needed to hear. Not cool, not nice. A real sound. A loud, genuine, delighted sound that echoed in my chest all the way home. I've thought a lot about the sequence of it all, not the dramatic parts, not the court hearing, not the deed conversation, not the phone call from my ex-husband where I finally said I don't care and meant it down to the bone. I think about the small moments before any of that. The text he sent the morning of my biggest professional day. Good luck today, I guess. I guess. That tiny throwaway hedge that he probably didn't even notice he'd written. That's where it actually started. Not with his mother moving in. Not with the bullet points in her handwriting. It started long before that, in the accumulation of small dismissals that I had trained myself to explain away. I was good at that. I had years of practice. He's tired. He's stressed about his own job. He means well. He's just not great at expressing things. I told myself those stories so many times they felt like facts. What I understand now is that indifference is its own kind of choice. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with a dramatic moment you can point to. It just slowly rearranges the furniture of your life until one day you look around and nothing is where you put it. And somehow, you've been apologizing for noticing. The thing about my husband, and I say this without venom, genuinely, is that he never once considered what it would cost me. Not the money, not the mortgage, not the equity percentage. He never considered what it cost me to come home from the hardest one day of my career and be asked to stop and get milk. He had made a complete internal calculation in which my effort was an input and his comfort was the output. And he had never examined that equation because nobody had ever asked him to. When Priya played the recording in that courtroom, my mother-in-law's voice, so warm and reasonable, saying we can always add you back later, I watched my husband's face. He didn't look like a villain in that moment. He looked like a man who had just heard himself described accurately for the first time and didn't recognize the description. That's the thing nobody tells you about this kind of situation. The person doing the harm is often not calculating. They're just operating from a set of assumptions they've never been challenged to examine. My worth was assumed, my income was assumed, my patience was assumed, and when I stopped supplying those things, the whole structure collapsed, because it had never been built to stand on its own. I don't think the choices I made were particularly brave. I think they were just logical. Once I stopped being afraid of what would happen if I made them. Opening a separate account. Calling Tara. Walking into Priya's office. Installing a $39 camera. None of it felt like power in the moment. It felt like putting one foot in front of the other in the dark. But that's usually what getting out of something looks like from the inside. Not a grand gesture, just a series of small, clear-eyed decisions made by someone who finally decided to trust what she already knew. The jasmine vine I started from a cutting, the one on my apartment patio now, is about 18 inches tall. It's not the same as the one on the back fence at the house I painted and paid for and eventually let go, but I started this one myself, from scratch, and I know exactly what went into it. That feels like the right metaphor for where I am. Not restored. Not returned to something I had before, just growing something new, in a space that's entirely mine, with no one rearranging the furniture while I'm at work. Tara still asks about it every time she visits. She comes out onto the patio with her coffee and checks on it like it's a case she's monitoring. Last time she said, "Still alive." I said, "Better than that." She looked at it for a second, then at me. "Yeah," she said. "I see that."